Hi guys, in this video I'm going to be taking a look at the Judge Dredd starter box.
Gruffy Crow.
Okay, so I picked this up for pretty cheap. I can't remember how much, but it was not only on sale, but Warlord sent me a voucher because I'd not shopped there for a while, and I got it in one of their sales. And straight off the bat, I'll say it's probably worth the money. I can't remember what the money was, but yeah, I seem to remember it feeling pretty good deal. I mostly just wanted this awesome limited edition figure, the sort of duel between Death and Dredd. I thought it was pretty cool. So yeah, I wanted to pick it up for that. But also, I grew up with the 2000 AD comics. A long time ago, my nan cancelled my weekly delivery of the Beano and replaced it with 2000 AD when I was a little bit too young. But I was hooked for many, many years. And I'm still a big fan of 2000 AD sort of graphic novels and other stuff that I pick up. And in case anyone was wondering, I prefer the Sylvester Stallone film to the Carl Urban one, but they're both great.
Court's adjourned.
But yeah, so what do you get in the box? Reading the bottom here. You get 10 miniatures, a rulebook, a quick start scenario book, a gaming mat, die cut scenery, unit cards, armory cards, cards, some water slides, game tokens, dice. So let's have a look at each of those bits individually, and I'll give you my thoughts. Sort of rule book you would normally get in a sort of board game, boxed game type situation. This is a full rule book for a full game, like a full miniatures game. So this isn't. So when I picked this up, I was kind of under the impression it was a bit of a boxed game because it came with a battle mat and everything. And I think it is. You've got everything you need to play in this box. But this, as I said, is a full miniatures rule set that can be expanded on greatly. There's sort of loads of rules in the back for sort of different factions and stuff, and different scenarios, and yeah, just a full standard rule book. And I'll give you my thoughts on that in a second. So these are another thing that I'm pretty impressed by. These are the token sprues. Now these big tokens in the middle are actually needed to play the game. Everything else is sort of health, wound, stress markers and things. Like in a lot of games, you have these sort of wounds markers and stress markers and things, but they're not kind of required to play the game. And there's a lot of companies out there that make various ones. These ones are very specific. So you've got your sort of different sort of wounds and stress and pinned markers, but these, what are there? 6 there. 4 on the top are slightly different from the 2 on the bottom. If I can show you one of the gold ones. The bottom ones, as you see, have got little stars on, whereas the other ones are plain. But they're designed the way they are, so if you can't see them, you can't kind of tell the difference by feel. That's because, similar to some other Warlord games such as Bolt Action, turn order is decided by sort of blind bag pick. And these are the tokens you use, whereas in Bolt Action you use the order dice. For this you use these tokens. But the ones with stars on give you slightly sort of better results. But not to worry, because there's enough included in the game to play with the stuff you've got. I'm assuming you can get these separately and in different colours, because so each side playing against each other need different colours. So in this case we've got some for the judges and some for the sort of gang members. The cards I'll just skim over, because I don't really know what they do yet. But these ones are quite useful. These have got all the stats for your gang members on, including the weapons and special rules, which is something I quite like. And they're lovely quality cards. I don't tend to sleeve my cards or anything, but these have got a nice sort of snap to them, and they're, yeah, they just feel quite nice compared to other cheap cards I've had in the past in other games. Here's the thing of graffiti. I'm not sure how much use I'll get out of that, but that's a cool thing to include. Sort of Judge Dredd graffiti. See if we can get in focus. Judge Dredd graffiti logos and things. This box doesn't come with any sort of 3D terrain, so there's nothing to use it for in the box. So yeah, it's just a weird, nice addition, I guess. Another cool addition to this is this here. This is the die cut. This is the die cut terrain. So these are actually so well cut that as I lift out that, you can see that they're already falling out of the card. And we've got some sort of barriers got a little vehicle or something. And that's different on each side as well, just slightly. So on this vehicle, we've got it hole here and then sort of exploded on the other side, which is cool. And obviously one of the sort of big costs and time sinks when you start in a new miniatures game is getting terrain. So this is quite a cool little addition, but more what you'd expect in a sort of boxed game with something like Zombicide or something like that. But yeah, I like it. I like the quality of them, the nice sort of hard punch board. And then that leads us on to this. So this is the sort of play mat they've included. And on one side we've got this sort of ruined street sort of look. And on the other we've got this sort of overpass. I don't think you can see that, but I guess this area down the middle is meant to sort of represent higher ground, and then we've got a sort of plaza underneath. It's very cool they've included this. I think one of the challenges as well for beginner players is having somewhere to play their games. My concern is that it won't lie particularly flat, but I'll see that how flat and playable we can get that. I currently don't own any kind of sci-fi battle mat, so although I'm probably not going to use that much for a lot of games, I can see me occasionally using it for something like 5 Parsecs or Stargrave even, because yeah, it could be quite a useful little bit just to change up the scenery every now and again. As I said, between that and the cardboard bits we just looked at, yeah, you've got a quick way there to play a few games. The theme of this is going to be enough that you can get playing with this game. Another thing towards that is the dice. So you've got 8 dice that have got hit, 2000 AD logo, and a shield on them. So this is part of the core mechanic for playing the game, for shooting and defending yourself. You roll a handful of these depending on your stat. It is nice they've included them. They kind of have to, with it being a box game and these being required by the rules. You could get away with saying like 1, 2, and 3 is a hit, 4 and 5 is a shield, and 6 is the logo or something like that. But yeah, these are nice quality dice. There's no sort of problems on any of the 8 that I got. I think they're about 12mm ones. Yeah, and it's just a nice thing to have in the box to get started with this game. The box also came with a couple of smaller D6s, which I've replaced with some slightly larger ones out of my box. One thing the game doesn't come with is any kind of movement sort of measuring device, a nice movement key, or even sort of those floppy rulers that 40k stuff comes with recently. Something like that would be cool, I think. Be interesting to have included in there. I mean, I'm probably just going to use a tape measure. If you were trying to introduce completely new players to the game, it'd be cool to have something else in there supplied, I think. Yeah, it's the only thing I can think of that you need to play this game that's not already in that box. Oh, apart from a blind bag. So those tokens we looked at earlier are pulled blind. So you need something like this that you can't see into to play the game. So you can pick one up like this. This is like a little velvety one off eBay for a couple of quid quite easily. And I have a variety of these for playing things like Bolt Action and Warlords of Erewhon and stuff. In fact, I have an official Bolt Action one. In fact, I have an official Bolt Action one, which is quite expensive for what it is. But as I said, you can get one of these for a couple of quid, but it'd be nice if this had been included, as it is something you do need to play the game. And it's not necessarily something that everyone's going to have laying around like I have. Last, and quite possibly least, are the models. So this box comes with a number of sort of gangers and a couple of judges. So these models are made using this new sort of casting technique that's mostly seen in sort of board games and what have you like that. It means that they are kind of flexible. If we look at this little knife, you can see that it's not a very nice shape, and it's kind of bendy, and all these models are going to require some cleanup. They did come with integral bases, which I sliced off and replaced with these little 3D printed ones, but that was more of a test to see how easy that would be and see how if I could 3D print bases nicely or not. I guess the upside of this technology is it's quite cheap, quite quick. I think, as if I understand it correctly, it's a sort of combination of sort of resin casting and almost injection molding, But what it results in is very flat miniatures. So if I turn these sideways, they almost disappear. And the reason for that is, I think, is the mold technology. It's kind of limited. And obviously they want to make these one-piece sculpts, so that they even had integral bases, which is fine if you consider this is like a board game situation. But for something that's like a miniatures game, I don't think these are really up to it. These are available to buy separately, which is not something I could probably recommend. I think there's a lot of better Ganger models out there that you could go for. I mean, partly as well as style's not really my thing. They've kind of got realistic proportions, which is kind of cool in its way, but not really my style. I prefer the slightly more exaggerated minis. So I'm not that bothered by the Gangers. My problem is the judges. I'm probably going to have to hunt down some better judge models if I ever want to use judges. As I said, there's nothing wrong with this model. It's just not great. And I said it's very, very flat. To the point where they've even sort of deformed the helmet. So it's not just that the sculpt's quite flat. The actual casting as well is kind of squashed, it feels. And some of them are better than others. The sort of rookie judge girl here, it's still not a particularly nice sculpt, but it's got a little bit more sort of, it's a little bit more dynamic in its way. But if you sort of compare it to the sort of dynamicism and the sort of detail that you can get in this lovely hunk of metal, as I said, which was the special edition that came with it, they're just not as nice. I said, be fine for a starter set, kind of, fine for a board game. But yeah, not my style. I probably will hunt out some more judges, and if I do, I'll probably put them on these sort of clear bases like I use for a lot of my sci-fi stuff at the moment. And I'm also already working on another faction that I might use for this game, as well as there's options for robots, and I've got loads of robots. And I actually do have a Judge Death model as well, and I might do a Judge Death with some cultists. Could be pretty cool. Could be a little kit bash between some of the Frostgrave and Stargrave kits, I think. And the last thing in the box that we haven't looked at is this scenario pamphlet. This I really like. So this is the sort of thing you would get in a kind of boxed board game type situation, something like Zombicide. And it does mention on the front here that obviously the scenarios in the book for playing standard games, and as you open it out to a sort of wider war game. But this one specifically denotes scenarios using the stuff that you have in this box. So it says which models to use, and it's got sort of specific rules and layouts, which I'm going to assume use the map we just looked at and the little terrain pieces and stuff. So I like that this sort of eases you into it. It kind of reminds me of the little book you got with Hero Quest back in the day, which is the sort of thing I like if you're trying to produce a box that's to try and lure people into a bit more wargaming. So I like this. And I think that is everything that is in the box. So the next thing I want to talk about is the rules themselves. As I said, it's very cool that they included the full rulebook. I have been having a flick through, and I quite like the way a few of the mechanics appear on paper, at least. Sort of the Argo Yugo using the tokens for random activations, and some of the mechanics for shooting and defending yourself with those dice, though I think they kind of might go on a little bit long, but I'll take a look at that in a second. My feeling about a Judge Dredd miniatures game is kind of coloured by the older Judge Dredd game, which I think was published by Mongoose, but through Warlord, and that was terrible. That was really, really bad. The book was badly laid out. The rules were hard to understand, if I remember correctly. They were wildly unbalanced, which is something I'm worried about in this as well. And that older rule set has kind of flavoured my perception of a new Judge Dredd game. But this is completely fresh as far as I can see. The book is lovely, really nice artwork on all the pages. So far, the rules have been easy to understand. The actual rules for playing the game are only the first 30 pages or so, and a bunch of that is sort of charts for weapons and things. So it should be a fairly easy game to get the hang of, I think. I said the last part of the book's about scenarios. You've got a whole chunk about different factions. And there's some really good little sort of snippets about sort of lore and background into the Judge Dredd sort of world. I mean, obviously there's decades of history that they can kind of pull from. I said, just mention the art again. Obviously this is a comic-based game, but yeah, some lovely cool stuff in here. So the next test is going to be actually to play it. I'm going to take it around someone's house who's not a massive miniatures war gamer. They're into their Blood Bowl. They've played a bit of 40k, as I understand, but they don't have a lot of experience with sort of miniatures games. Obviously, I've not played this yet, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go there, with these models, just the contents of the box, and see if we can have a good time playing through the sort of beginner booklet. And I'll come back to you after that, and I'll tell you what my thoughts were. Okay, so I've been giving these guys an incredibly last-minute paint job. So here are the judges. Spent a little bit more time on those, and I'm pretty happy with how they came out. They're okay sculpts, they're not great. The gangers, on the other hand, are terrible. There's not one thing I like about them. I'm just about to whack a wash on there. Basically, the method of painting I've gone for is cover up all the grey undercoat and then just try and let the wash deal with the rest. I was feeling pretty charitable towards these initially, but now I've kind of forced myself to paint them. I've got a lot of problems with them. I think first and biggest is the material and the casting style. They're just so flat and the material's just crappy, which meant that the details are bad and just, I don't know, just weirdly bad. And I was kind of prepared for that, but the more I spent time with these models, the less sort of 2000 AD-esque they felt to me. They just were missing some of that sort of character. And they also don't look like a cohesive gang. They look like separate sculpts that have sort of just been put together in a force that don't really fit in some way. I can't really describe it, but they don't feel like they were designed well. And the more time I spend with them, the less I actually even like the quality, like the actual sculpts themselves, which initially I was willing to give a bit of a pass to, just thinking they weren't really my style. But I just think they're sort of a bit derivative, they're just not very interesting. I said it comes back to them not really having that comic book style, really. They're just incredibly, I don't know, generic. I guess you can't really tell so much on the Judge models because you didn't require any imagination there. You just, knocked out a Judge Dredd model. There's a very set way you do that. But I think, yeah, it affects the gang a little bit more. And you could definitely do a lot to make them look better, I reckon. You could spend a lot more time in the paint job and really try and pick out all these chunky little details and kind of make details up where they're not there and stuff like that. You could definitely do stuff on these models that would make them better. But for me, it's just not worth it. I'm probably just going to pick up some different gangers if I want to play this anymore. I mean, I'm not defending the terrible sort of Chinese pre-paint level of paint job I'm doing on these guys, but I like to play stuff painted, and I think even a rough paint job's better than no paint job in some situations. So okay, here they are. Washes are still drying. I've just quickly just painted the bases flat grey, and I've stuck them in this tub just to get them to my mate's house to try the game out. Okay, so it was yesterday I had that game, and now I can give you my thoughts on how it played. First thing I'll say is, yeah, we followed the booklet, and we did the first couple of scenarios. If I was writing this myself, there's a couple of things I'd do differently. I'd probably include the weapon stats that you required in this page, just for quick reference, so you didn't have to keep going back to the rulebook quite so much, and you could stick on the pages for the specific combat, which would be quite good. Also, the scenarios in the book, we played the first two, and they went quite quickly. I think they're designed to go quite quickly, but they were a little bit simplistic. I was less impressed with the table and the little bits of card terrain than I thought I'd be, because the table was so busy, the kind of card terrain got a bit lost, and it wasn't really needed in the scenarios. Overall, I was a bit let down by the whole thing as a box game. So yeah, we'll start with the things I didn't like. I don't think the scenarios were long enough, or we didn't get to the end. I think by the time you get to the end, you start to introduce a lot more sort of aspects, the cards and all the minis and sort of more special rules and things that we didn't quite get onto. And I guess the idea of this is that it sort of slowly eases you into it. But the first couple of scenarios were possibly a bit off-putting. Another thing I didn't quite like is we've got the terrain sort of placement ideas. They're written on here, but what it actually asks you to sort of put on isn't what they put on that battle map, and I think it's a missed opportunity. I think you could have made that battle map completely fit this. Then you wouldn't really have even needed, in some ways, the card terrain, especially for the first couple of scenarios, and then you could have the other side for the other scenarios. Sorry, saying that, there's only 3 scenarios, so we played 2 out of 3 of them. So the first side of the map was kind of set up for this, and it kind of worked for the first one, but the other side wouldn't have worked for this layout, I don't think. So I think they missed an opportunity there. I think you could have almost done away with the die-cut terrain and actually made that map a bit better, or made the cut terrain stand out a little bit better somehow, and maybe make the battle a little bit less busy so the terrain was a bit more obvious. One of the 2 things. So I think they let themselves down there a little bit. In these smaller games, the balance was a bit out, I think, as well. In both games, the Juves won. In the first one, they were able just to flee off the table, which was the sort of aim of the game, quite easily without any kind of real struggle. And in the second one, the weapons they were given and the way it was laid out, before the backup even arrived, the judges were down. And I think part of that's due to the limits of it being such a small game, with only having like 3 models on one side and like 2 on the other. It's always going to be a little bit simplistic, and it was a good way to learn the mechanics. I think this game would be tested and be a bit better at sort of 10 models per side. I think that'd be a lot more interesting, and I think you could scale this up a lot better than they've scaled it down, I reckon. Which kind of moves me on to what I did like about it. Although those first little scenarios weren't super enjoyable from a wargaming experience, it did make me think the game's probably got something to it that I actually quite like. The attacking and defending yourself sort of dice rolls are relatively fluid once you get the hang of what you do. So first of all, there's a paired roll to see if you hit or not, which is how many hits you can roll, the attacker can roll, compared to how many sort of little 2000 AD symbols, which is a 1 in 6, the defender can roll, depending on your stats. And then that's followed by a weapon power versus armor pair of rolls. And then the resulting difference in those works out how many wounds you've done. And that flows quite nicely. We didn't really get to do much hand-to-hand combat, but it used a very similar set of rolls so as the shooting. And I think this is probably designed to be a mostly shooting game. And I think it'll work quite well as quite a fast and bloody game as well. As I said, one of the Jews took out the trainee judge in one shot with a repeating shotgun, stump gun. And that was quite impressive. It was quite fun as well. And basically, the idea was we were ambushed, so you just popped up and blew her up, which is, I think it's pretty cool. I said it didn't make for much fun playing through the scenarios, but I said I could see in the future it being quite a fast and sort of bloody game, which I lean towards when I'm playing these sort of skirmish games. I don't really like the ones where you're sort of bouncing off each other and it's quite protracted and stuff. I think all in all, as a box game, which is currently about £50 on the Warlord Games website, I'm not sure if it's going to be 100% worth it. Just as a box that you get and play, I think you get some different mileage out of that. As I said, I got it quite cheap. I think under 30 quid. Maybe it was worth that. So if you see it in a sale, it might be worth picking up. Mostly just for the rulebook and all the cards and tokens and everything that would then allow you to go on and play this as a war game. As a war game and as a sort of wider game, I think it's actually got quite a bit of potential. The mechanics seem pretty straightforward. The book's well written. The sort of campaigns and scenarios seem like they might be quite fun. I'm gonna have to play I'm gonna have to try a bigger game to see what the balance is like and see if it does actually work quite nicely. But I think it's got some interesting ideas and it might be worth playing. My concerns are going to be a couple of things. One is going to be that it's got a bit of a barrier to entry. I said if you want to get the book and the tokens and stuff like that, you're going to be looking at a minimum of £30 if you just want those. And I said on the box set with them in, plus the cards and things, sort of £50. Then there's a sort of quite good looking bundle. That's about another £100, which will get you a second faction that's not judges, and some additional bits and pieces. But not a lot of people are going to throw £150 on a sort of unknown game to try out, I don't think. But that collection is probably a good second move. If you've got someone you've played through this scenario, you like what you did, and you want to sort of expand out, it's probably not a bad shout. The other problem I can see going forward with this is the miniatures. The additional miniatures for this game are all that similar sort of, they're calling it Warlord resin. So I think it's that kind of Sirecast sort of injection molded single piece models, which probably means that I won't buy any of them. I'm not happy with the quality of the ones that I got in that box. Partly it's because they're not really my style, but partly the quality of the material and the details and stuff like that weren't really sort of something I'd be interested in collecting or painting again. Now, for most of the factions in the book, that's not going to be too much of a problem. Stuff like gangers and militia and things like that can be fairly easy to pick up from a whole bunch of sort of third-party type sites. For instance, I've got my eye on these guys from Wargames Foundry, and these guys are pretty cool from a seller on My Mini Factory. And I'm also working on these hoverboard guys using parts from Imitation of Life miniatures and a hoverboard that I designed myself. Just because, you know, I'm kind of into the background and the fluff, and I kind of do want to get involved with this game. The only problem with that is obviously the actual judge models themselves, which is kind of like an iconic part of this game. Warlord are currently the only people licensed to sell actual Judge Dredd miniatures, the proper IP. So you would be limited to what they sell for that. There's a chance that the miniatures that you buy separately are probably maybe got better quality or better detailed or something. I don't have any, so I can't tell you for sure. What I will say is if they are, then the ones in the box aren't a very good advert if that is the case. But if they are the same quality as the ones in the box, I'm not interested. So either way, yeah, they've put me off buying them. So all in all, a bit of a mixed bag. I love the book. I love the theme. I love some of the mechanics. I've kind of got hopes for it being a good game. And hopefully I can do a battle report and try it out a little bit on a wider scale and see if it is enjoyable. But I think that Warlord maybe aren't handling it the best they could. I think the pricing for what you get is a little bit high. They've already kind of moved on to Slain using the sort of same 2000 AD license. So knowing Warlord, I'm not sure how often they're going to add things to this range. And they're almost definitely knowing Warlord, not really going to add to this book in any way, I wouldn't have thought. So this is kind of it. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the box set itself and the game as a whole. What are your thoughts? Has anyone tried this out? Does it work as a bigger game? Are you a fan of the IP? Does this interest you at all? Let me know down in the comments or jump on my Discord and give me a shout. If you know of any sources of some sort of 2000 AD suitable models other than the ones I've mentioned, let me know, I'll take a look. If you like this video, remember to sort of, you know, like, share and subscribe, the standard. And if there's anything you'd like to see from me, just drop it in the comments or come and let me know on the Discord. And as ever, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.